There's a lot of ways to achieve it. You can train, you can study, you can meditate, you can be born with it. All that really matters is whatever avenue you take,
it ends up at as much power as possible. At least that's the case in anime and manga, and a little bit in the real world. And every single individual piece of fiction has different ways that you can acquire power. Though a lot of them do tend to follow the same routes. You can be born powerful, you can train super hard to be powerful, or you can just stumble upon something that makes you powerful. And Naruto is no exception to this rule. Well, in Naruto, you can train in your ninjutsu, and your taijutsu, and your genjutsu. You can learn a new elemental release, you can get in a ton of battles and get battle IQ. There are some ways that are lesser understood that one acquires power. And probably the way that's the least understood that one acquires power in the Naruto universe is chakra pool. See, in Naruto, we understand that some people have a lot of chakra, while others don't. The Senju and the Uzumaki have insane reserves of chakra that allow them to battle for days, while other clans, like the Inuzuka or the Lee, don't have a lot of chakra. However, it doesn't all boil down to where you're born or who you're born to. Some people make decisions in their lives, or decisions are made for them before they're really alive, that allow them to access insane amounts of chakra. This is the case with Jinchuriki, or people who study the Byakuya. There are tons of different ways to max out your chakra pool. You can even technically take your own life and then be brought back throughout a tensei, and then boom, infinite chakra, or at least infinitely refilling chakra. But with all these different ways to acquire massive amounts of chakra, one would assume that a lot of people have stumbled upon the key to borderline infinite chakra. However, in the Naruto universe, that's not really the case. Obviously, as the show and the manga progressed, more and more people seem to be able to use more and more jutsus more and more frequently. Running out of chakra is still very much a threat for the majority of characters in Naruto. But there are some people that we very rarely see be put in that position. And those are the people we're going to be talking about today. Because today in Naruto, we're talking the top 10 people with the most chakra in Naruto. But before we get to talking about anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you like the idea of me doing top 10s from your favorite anime, you're gonna love my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where I talk all anime that's not Naruto or Boruto. And if you just love the idea of me talking about anime, you're gonna love my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, that I do every week with Danny Mata, where we break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So, chakra pools, they're somewhat inconsistent in the way that they're described. That is to say that some people appear to get massive changes in their chakra pool capacity with little to no explanation. One of the best examples of this being Kakashi, who prior to the 4th Great Shinobi World War was only able to use Kamui 2 to 3 times a day. However, by the time of the climax of the 4th Great Shinobi World War, he could use it seemingly endlessly. Now, we do understand that there are ways to increase your chakra pool. As we know, the chakra is created by a combination of spiritual and physical energy. Therefore, if you acquire more spiritual energy or more physical energy or more of both, you will get more chakra. So in order to acquire more physical energy, you need to be in better shape. You need to be stronger. And to acquire more spiritual energy, you need to get in more battles. You need to get more experience. You need to meditate. And by doing both of those things, you can access more chakra. And while we do know that Kakashi and many other people who acquired way more chakra by the time the finale of the 4th Great Shinobi World War came around were in fact training and rather hard in the time skip, chakra limits do seem to be somewhat arbitrary. However, just because the upper chakra limits of somebody are pretty arbitrary, that doesn't mean that we can't categorize how much chakra each individual person has in comparison to each other, and then make a list about who has the most chakra in Naruto, which is why we're gonna start our list right now. Now, I know technically I did say this is a top 10, but there's bonus answers, and number 10 technically has 2 spots. And sharing the number 10 spot, because we've never really seen anything to differentiate them, at least on a chakra level, is Tsunade and Sakura. See, the reason that Tsunade and Sakura share this position is because the reason they're both on this list is the same jutsu, the strength of 100 seal. Now, the strength of 100 seal is an incredibly difficult thing to learn. Only those who have the most precise chakra control on Earth can learn it, and that's because the sheer task of pulling off this jutsu is insane. The reason this jutsu requires an insane amount of chakra control is because it's a bit like filling a pool with water 1 bucket at a time. See, the way that this jutsu works is that the user sets a seal on their forehead, and every day over the course of years, slowly but surely, they fill that seal with chakra. Any chakra they have left over from the day, or just any chakra period, goes into the seal, little by little. At least usually. We'll get into that in a second. Until eventually, the user has so much chakra in this seal they can accomplish pretty much anything. Now, what's usually accomplished with this seal is that when it's activated, it gives you the strength of 100 men. That's why it's called the Strength of 100 seal. And thus, in essence, the activation of the seal is supposed to make you somewhere in the region 100 times stronger, which is an insane boost, mind you. But strength isn't the only thing that can be conferred by the use of the seal, as those who use it also have the ability to use this massive amount of chakra pumping through their body to increase the mitotic regeneration of all of the cells in their body, meaning any injury incurred to you, with the possible exception of having your head cut off, can be healed, giving you the opportunity to die almost 100 times before you run out of chakra. And with the power of the seal and this seal alone, the user gains the ability to summon at least part of 괱ᴜᴇᴄ. So 괱ᴜᴇᴄ is so massive that you need to be able to activate this seal to even summon 10% of it. And those without the massive chakra reserves given to them by the usage of this seal will simply never be able to summon enough of her for it ever to matter. Because 괱ᴜᴇᴄ's true body is the size of a mountain. Even through the combined efforts of both Tsunade and Sakura in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, they only summon, I believe, because I always get this percentage wrong, 10% of 괱ᴜᴇᴄ. But can we truly quantify how much chakra Tsunade and Sakura's Byakuya seal give them? Well, no, not necessarily. We do know through the power of this seal that Tsunade was able to pump her medical ninjutsu through 괱ᴜᴇᴄ to the entirety of Konoha after Nagatoshira Tensei, meaning the seal holds basically enough chakra to heal the entirety of Konoha. On top of this, the usage of this seal also allowed Tsunade to bring her bisected body back together, bring all of the 5 Kage back to life, and provide constant healing during the 4th Great Shinobi World War, well, obviously with the help of Sakura. Now, when it comes to stamina feats, Sakura's are a bit less impressive than Tsunade's. There's no point where Sakura is healing the entirety of a city. Though we have seen in light novels that Sakura wields the Strength of 100 seal, and more specifically the mitotic regeneration that comes along with it, just as well as Tsunade does. This is also confirmed in the 4th Great Shinobi World War when she just runs at Madara and gets stabbed a bunch. What I will say about Sakura's endurance is the fact that she battled for just as long as anybody else in the 4th Great Shinobi World War without ever receiving an extra dose of chakra from Ninja Skydaddy. So all the chakra that carried Sakura through the 4th Great Shinobi World War was hers. But the fact that Sakura and Tsunade are number 10 on this list should key you into the fact that there's some people out there with some insane amount of chakra, with our number 9 being Karin. See, fortunately for us, Karin and Tsunade actually have quantifiable and somewhat equal amounts of chakra. We know this because Tsunade was able to bite Karin during the 4th Great Shinobi World War and refill her entire Byakuya seal. And this didn't kill Karin. I mean, it knocked her out, but it didn't kill her. Now, this would imply to us that Karin, who had been on the battlefield for a while, still had enough chakra left to refill years of Tsunade's work in just one mere moment. And therefore, if we assume that Karin wasn't at full chakra, which is a pretty easy assumption when we consider the fact that right before she was healing Tsunade, she was battling against Obito in wooden constructs and using adamantite chains, and had the entirety of her back blown out through wood release, which she then had to heal herself. It's pretty easy for us to assume that Karin has more chakra than Tsunade and Sakura, which makes sense because she is one of the only full-blooded Uzumakis we know of in the modern day. See, Karin's family left the land of whirlpools and went to the land of grass, which is why Karin was able to escape the Uzumaki massacre. However, because she was an Uzumaki with the heal bite ability in a war-torn country, Orochimaru got his grubby little mitts on her, which makes sense that he would want to do because Karin has heal bite, which allows people to bite her and heal and refill their chakra immediately, even if you're recently bisected and just emptied years worth of chakra in a battle against the weaker version of the final villain who managed to kill all 5 Kage simultaneously. And when it comes to quantifying Karin's upper chakra limits, this is really the best possible example for it. I mean, obviously throughout the duration of both Naruto and Boruto, because Karin shows up again, we've seen her refill the chakra of and heal the injuries of multiple people, with those multiple people usually being Sasuke, who Karin was able to save from multiple stab wounds from Killer Bee, also rejuvenating his chakra so Sasuke could go on to get defeated once again by Killer Bee. But outside of being able to rejuvenate people with a bite, Karin also has access to tons of Uzumaki abilities, like the Mind's Eye of the Kagura and Adamantite Chains, which are incredibly chakra depletive abilities that never have seemed to slow her down. Once again, the only time we've ever seen her slow down is when she completely refilled Tsunade's chakra. So putting her at number 9 feels like a pretty easy choice. But I know what you're saying.
Nick, a full-blooded Uzumaki at number 9, who could possibly be number 8?
Well, that would also be somebody who was possibly subject to human experimentation and also comes from a war-torn village, because coming in at number 8 we have Kisame. See, Kisame is known as the tailless tailed beast, an absolute monster of stamina. In fact, his chakra pool is so large, he was able to wield Samehada for over a decade, which is one of the most chakra exhaustive things you can do. As Samehada, even though the biggest attribute of Samehada is its ability to suck chakra from your enemies, when you're not battling enemies, constantly absorbs your chakra, as Samehada is a living sword that requires chakra to stay alive, and therefore only those with insane amounts of chakra can wield Samehada effectively. Outside of that, however, you also have to have a certain type of chakra that Samehada likes, as people with insane amounts of chakra, like Naruto, have been rejected by Samehada. Tie this into the fact that Kisame could refill his chakra reserves through the usage of Samehada, absorbing chakra from his opponent's cuts, and you have an insanely intimidating foe. I mean, when Kisame used 30% of his chakra to create a doppelganger that could battle against Naruto and Team 7 in order to keep them away from the Akatsuki hideout long enough to pull out the tailed beast out of Gaara, the chakra levels of that 30% doppelganger were compared to Naruto. Now, mind you, this was Naruto fresh off the time skip. He hadn't mastered Sage Mode, he didn't know KCM 1, KCM 2, he wasn't tight with Kurama. So no, I'm not gonna sit here and say that Kisame has 3 times more chakra than Naruto. But a third of your chakra being compared to any iteration of Naruto is gonna put you on this list. But enough about the bad guys, let's get back to the good. Because coming in at number 7, we have the third Raikage, A. Now, of all of the characters on this list, we probably know the least about the third Raikage. However, what we do know about the third Raikage are his battle feats. See, when it comes to endurance and stamina, the third Raikage is pretty unrivaled. See, not only has the third Raikage battled against Gyuki by himself for 24 hours until the both of them ran out of chakra and the battle was pretty much declared a draw, but he has also, by himself, battled against an army of 10,000 shinobi for 72 hours. Listen, the 24-hour feat is cool. A couple of people have done it. Madara, Hashirama, just a couple of names that come to the brain. However, there is no one in the Naruto universe that has battled for that long straight. And while obviously the third Raikage does technically have a moveset that is advantageous to this kind of long-form battle, and that is Nin Taijutsu, which is essentially just Taijutsu boosted with ninjutsu. The maintenance of this Nin Taijutsu for 3 straight days at a high level still requires an insane amount of chakra. It's not like he could take breaks. He was battling against 10,000 people. In the entirety of the time that he was battling against these 10,000 people, you better believe that he had his lightning cloak activated, which means on top of using his lightning cloak, he was most definitely using his hell stab, which means for 72 hours straight, the third Raikage had to maintain a layer of electrical chakra around himself. Mind you, Madara being able to maintain his MS for 24 hours straight is claimed to be one of the most impressive endurance feats of all time. Now, maintaining an MS is probably a bit more chakra taxing than using the lightning cloak and hell stab, but being able to battle against the second strongest tailed beast by yourself for 24 hours before running out of chakra and making sure that Gyuki runs out of chakra at the same time as you implies that the third Raikage's chakra levels are comparable to that of Gyuki. And as Gyuki is the tailed beast with 8 tails, not no tails like Kisame, I can't help but think that if the third Raikage's chakra levels are comparable to Gyuki's, that he has more chakra than Kisame. But we mentioned Madara, so let's talk about it, because coming in at number 6 is Madara. Now, placing Madara when talking about chakra pool is kind of tough. So for the purpose of today's video, we're going to be talking about alive Madara, because obviously the 3 Rinnegan Madara, who Hagoromo was afraid was approaching him in power, probably has the most chakra out of anybody outside of the Otsutsukis. I mean, he was able to maintain 3 Rinnegan. He had Hashirama's Sage Mode. He was basically the next up-and-coming Sage of 6 Paths. He was the Jinchuriki of the 10 Tails. But for the sake of today's video, not just being a list of Otsutskis, I'm trying to keep them off this list, because otherwise the top 6 would just be random Otsutskis. Because I'll tell you right now, Kaguya Ishiki, Momoshiki, Kinshiki, Oroshiki, and what's the one on the moon? Toneri. All have more chakra than any human alive. Yes, Naruto included. But that's boring. So today we're talking about Madara while he was alive, who still had an insane amount of chakra. And he kind of had to. Remember that Madara's eternal rival was Hashirama, who was stated to have basically limitless chakra. And Hashirama also had an infinite healing factor that was powered by that chakra. And thus, if Madara ever wanted any hopes of defeating Hashirama, he would have to damage him so many times that Hashirama would run out of chakra and therefore run out of healing factor.
Correct.
But that's next to
All the
impossible
cabins
to
they might
do.
pass
See,
by
when
have been
Madara was born, even amongst the
Remember to report to
Uchihas,
lead
his
researcher
chakra
Asta.
was said to be demonic. Now, it's partially because he was a reincarnation of Indra, and therefore inherited the cycle of hatred
We'll deal
more
with
than
problems
any other
outside the base
Uchiha.
zone
And being the successor of Indra's chakra allowed
It's
him
you.
to pull off feats, like battling against Hashirama and Tobirama for a full 24 hours. However, this isn't even the most impressive thing
Sorry,
that Madara
this
ever
is
did. See, Madara,
embarrassing.
as an old man, when he
We
awoke
suddenly
to
had
his
some
dual
stuff
Rinnegan,
come up.
was able to summon the
wanted to take care of it
괰ᴜ,
before
also
you
known as the
arrived,
demonic statue
but
of the
I
Outer Path,
can't seem
from
to
its
even get a
cage
break around
on
here.
the moon. Now, for those of you who don't remember,
Never
the
mind about
demonic
that.
statue of the Outer Path
Here,
is the husk of
this
the
is for you.
Ten-Tails. And that husk is
I
so
made it
large
this
that
morning,
Choji and Chozo,
and I've been
when
keeping it warm.
fully expanded, were still smaller than it. Now, mind you, Choji and Chozo at their full height are said to be the size of a mountain. And Madara summoned that from the moon,
she had
from
fitting this
inside
morning.
of the moon, actually.
made it
Madara
especially
has
for
so
you.
much chakra that
I
even when
spent
he
a long
split his
time
chakra
wondering what to
into
give you.
25 clones in
In
the
the
Fourth
end,
Great Shinobi World
I
War,
realized I
he
should
was
stick to
still
what I'm good
enough
at.
to defeat the five
Asta
Kage.
loves
But
my
Madara
fried
did
rice,
come
so
from
sorry
the
it's so
Uchiha, who
noisy
aren't
here.
exactly known
I
for their
wanted to find
massive
somewhere
chakra
quieter
reserves.
where I could
While
get
they
your
obviously need
feedback,
enough chakra
but-
to control the MS or the EMS or just a standard Sharingan, when it comes down to it, birthright also means a lot when we're talking about chakra,
I'm
which
pretty
is why coming in at
confident
number
in
5,
this dish.
we have another full-blooded
Unfortunately, I was a bit
Uzumaki.
rushed at
Just
the
this
end.
time, it's Nagato.
Some
See, well, there
big
is
shot
a lot of
suddenly
things that one
decided to
can
visit
do
the
to
space
increase
station
their
today.
chakra. Being born in the
Everyone has
Uzumaki
been in a
clan is
hurry
pretty much
since
the
the
best way to get a massive
They're all
chakra.
worried
But
that a
even
bad
amongst
impression
the
could damage
Uzumaki,
Madame Herta's
Nagato had an
reputation.
insane amount
Miss
of
Asta
chakra.
said
This is
that
why
the guest
Madara
appears
chose
to
him
be
to be the
Madame
wielder
Herta's
of his
research
Rinnegan after
partner.
his death. Because
He's
Madara
doing
understood
research
that this
with her?
boy, who was only
He
a couple
must
of
be
years
famous
old at
throughout
the
the
time,
galaxy.
would have enough
Look at the
chakra to
time.
wield
The guest
two
is almost
Rinnegan.
here.
Now, mind you,
If you're
Obito, as a
curious, just follow the
full-grown
crowd.
adult, could only wield one at a time. A full-grown adult who had half a body of Hashirama's cells. And yet Nagato, as a child, had enough chakra to wield both. Now, obviously, when it comes to chakra feats, Nagato has a ton. Nagato was left permanently crippled after his battle against Hanzo, where he sustained injuries to his legs after summoning the 괰ᴜ, which meant that Nagato, if he wanted to continue to battle, had to channel his power and his chakra through the 6 paths of pain. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, after summoning the 괰ᴜ, Nagato became connected to multiple chakra rods. Chakra rods that Nagato could use to send out chakra to other chakra rods that he placed in the bodies of the 6 paths of pain. And Nagato operated these 6 paths of pain like they were dolls, essentially. From massive distances away, mind you, sometimes miles. And not only was he controlling all 6 of these incredibly powerful dolls simultaneously, with each one of them manifesting one of the abilities of the Rinnegan outside of the Deva path, which had them all, but he was also seeing through the eyes of every single one of the 6 paths of pain, as well as augmenting the chakra frequency that he was sending to the 6 paths of pain, so it could never be tied down where his actual body was. I mean, Nagato's chakra reserves are so insane that in the battle against Naruto, he was not only able to control all 6 paths of pain to basically destroy the entirety of Konoha and all of the ninja there, also channel enough chakra into the Deva path that he was able to use a Shirai Tensei that flattened the biggest village on
So
Earth.
this visitor is...
Get ready.
Hypothesis. Thought always precedes word. And yet, I can't find the words for this moment. It's good to see you, Asta. I apologize. I'm 4
Now,
minutes
obviously,
and
after
30
using this
Of
technique, the
course
Deva
not,
path
Mr.
needed a
Scrollum.
minute to recharge,
Welcome
and
to
this took
Herta
a
Space
lot out of
Station.
Nagato,
No
technically
need for
shortening his
formalities,
life.
Asta.
But even though it
Herta
seemed
Space
after using that
Station is
Shirai
where
Tensei that
knowledge
Nagato was going to be
converges.
out of the
Here
battle
we
for a while,
celebrate
all
the
5 of the
equality
other
of
paths of
thought.
pain continued battling
Such
with no
collaboration
issue.
between
And after a
organic
couple
life
of
forms
minutes,
is
the Deva
magnificent.
path was
We
right back
appreciate
up
your
and
high
running,
praise,
going
Mr.
so far
Scrollum.
in that
Would
same
you like
battle
me
as
to
the
show you around?
Yuzuchibaku Tensei
Since the
so
last
large,
summit,
it was
we've
able
watched
to
several new
basically
Well, that
seal
sounds lovely.
Kurama. Not to mention
But I do
Nagato
have a
went on
meeting
to
with Herta,
individually
so let's
kill
put the new
every
supply-
Jonin in
Madame
Konoha
Herta
base.
should be
And
in her
after
office. I'll
doing
take you there.
all
Right
of
this
this,
way.
Nagato still had enough chakra
Sure.
left to use Rini Rebirth to bring every person he
And
killed
you
in
are?
Konoha back to life, which leads us to believe that Nagato had so much chakra
Ah,
he could use
hello,
Rini
young
Rebirth
sir.
on one person
I've heard
and
so much
probably
about you.
survive.
Herta
Uzumakis
talks about
are
you
just
often.
built different, which is why we have
She's
another
quite
Uzumaki
curious
on this
about you,
list, because coming
as
in at
am
number
I.
4, We have
What's it
Kushina.
like
And
to
see, this
live in
list should really be called,
symbiosis
how
with a
closely
stellar?
related are you to the
I hope we'll have
Uzumaki? Because
sufficient
there is
time in the
nobody
future
in
to
the
get to know
Naruto
each
world
other
who has
and
as much
answer this
chakra and
question.
life force as them. This is why they were creators of some of the strongest Fuinjutsu in all of Naruto. The amount of chakra they were able to control at their fingertips
Sorry,
was enough to
I
put the
wanted to
clamps
show you
on
around,
pretty
but
much
now I
anything.
don't think
On
I'll
top
be
of this,
able to
this
get
is why the
away.
Uzumakis were the creators of things like the 8-trigram seal and Reaper Death Seal. As not only were they incredible at sealing things away,
Alright,
they
see you
themselves
later.
were also considered the perfect Jinchuriki, having the chakra and life force necessary to balance out any tailed beast. Now, obviously, the Uzumaki life force comes from their close relation to the Senju, as the Uzumaki and the Senju were close descendants of Asura, who received the chakra and life force of
Strange.
Hagoromo. But so
It should
far
not-
as red-haired
Do you need
Uzumakis go,
such a
Kushina by
allow
far
me
and
to-
away
you
has
probably know
the
that
most chakra.
during
Well,
the-
some would say we don't have enough feet
No,
to scale
we
just how much
include
chakra
us a while
Kushina
ago,
has.
and
I
you
would
get-
rally against that. Well, true, we do technically
Yeah,
have way
but
more
it's
battle
this
data from the likes of
time. Mine is
Nagato
not
and
just-
even Karin. There's a reason that Kushina was sent to Konoha. See, when Kushina was sent to Konoha, the village hidden in the whirlpools, the Uzumaki clan headquarters, still exist, and they had an incredibly close relationship with Konoha. The Senju and the
drop
Uzumaki had been
of
battling
unbelief,
side
so
by
this-
side for thousands of years. Hashirama
Wait,
married
oh,
Mito. They had
we need
children.
to dis-
Mito went to Konoha to become the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, which Konoha kept. And therefore, when Mito hit an age where people were starting to get concerned that she would soon pass away, Konoha decided to call the Land of Whirlpools and were like,
Can you send us your best?
and at that current moment, Kushina, as a child, around 8 or 9 years old, was sent to Konoha. Because by the time that Kushina was 8 or 9 years old, she was already identified, even amongst the Uzumaki clan, to have an insane amount of chakra. We learned this in chapter 500 when we learned that Kushina was able to create a unique form of chakra that made her compatible with being a Jinchuriki. And that unique form of chakra was just incredibly potent chakra. And while obviously Kushina at her max chakra is while she was a Jinchuriki, as we are now talking about a woman who amongst the Uzumakis was considered to have insane life force and chakra, being the Jinchuriki of the strongest tailed beast in existence, meaning that effectively she could have doubled or tripled the amount of chakra she had access to. Kushina's most impressive chakra and life force feats happened after she stopped becoming a Jinchuriki. See, Kushina's life force and chakra reserves were so incredibly high that after giving birth, she had Kurama extracted from her. Mind you, most women after they give birth aren't able to move for a little while. And most people in the Naruto universe, when they have their tailed beast removed, die immediately. However, this isn't necessarily the case with Uzumakis. Both Mito and Kushina survived Kurama's extraction. And while Kushina might have died eventually from having Kurama extracted, she most likely wouldn't have. As like we've already stated, Mito survived Kurama being extracted from her and continued to live on for a couple of years. But Mito just existed in bed. Kushina did not do that. Kushina went right onto the battlefield beside her husband Minato, and by herself released adamantite chains that not only sealed Kurama, but also created a barrier around the battlefield that Hiruzen, Sarutobi could not break through. Kushina was not only using her adamantite chains to seal the strongest tailed beast on Earth, she was keeping out one of the most powerful human beings on Earth from joining in on the battle. Simultaneously, after having something that should have killed her happen to her. Now, obviously, she wasn't able to seal Kurama perfectly. He was still able to swing one hand. But the nail that Kurama swung through Minato and Kushina was roughly this large. And even after being impaled by said nail, Kushina did not die immediately. When it comes to chakra pools, she is next level even amongst Uzumaki.
Let's look around.
She's not Asura's reincarnation. See, being an Uzumaki is incredible. As a clan,
Judging
they're the
by
closest things to Asura's reincarnation. But that's the closest thing, not the thing. See, because while the Uzumaki clan do technically inherit the chakra
graffiti
of
location
Hagoromo because they
I heard
descend
they
from
call- I
Asura's
don't know
line,
the same
reincarnations of Asura have Asura's
you.
spirit
Gosh.
following them around. And Asura was the direct inheritor of Hagoromo's chakra in life
They
force,
seem
which is
to be
why our
heading
top
toward the
3
monitoring
start
room.
with Hashirama. Hashirama, also known as the god of shinobi, got the majority of his power from his life force and his chakra. See, when it came to a battle, there was basically no way to kill Hashirama. He had mitotic regeneration levels of
Another
heals that would
graffiti.
just simply
They're all
happen.
different,
He didn't have to
too.
weave hand signs. If you cut him, he healed. And that was powered by an almost limitless amount of chakra. In fact, after battling against Madara for 24
highly
hours, he was still left primed to battle.
Hold
With
on,
Madara
no
flat
wonder
on his back, with Tobirama holding a katana, over his neck. Hashirama's chakra is so dense and so plentiful that when he releases it, it affects the physical surroundings. That's only something we've ever seen in two people, Naruto and Hashirama. Being able to create waves around you simply by releasing your chakra is insane. This is similar to how the Hyugas use rotation, releasing chakra from each and every single one of their 10 Ketsu points. However, the difference here is this isn't intentional, and there's no rotating required. The best way we have to quantify Hashirama's chakra is from the 4th Great Shinobi World War, when Hashirama was looking out at the Shinobi Alliance covered in version 1 cloaks provided by Naruto and Kurama. And it's at this point that Hashirama stated, while looking at this combination of Naruto and Kurama's chakra, basically in its entirety, that, oh, this is about as much chakra I had when I was alive. Now, this has led some to believe that Hashirama only has as much chakra as half of Kurama. However, that couldn't be further from the truth. Hashirama was referring to the combination of Naruto and half of Kurama's chakra, meaning that Hashirama, while he was alive and in his peak, had a comparable amount of chakra to War Arc Naruto, which makes sense when you consider the fact that he's able to pull off incredibly high-level jutsus with next to no hand seals, use things like the 1,000-arm Kanon that are able to punch Susanos of Kurama, and a lot of that is because of his Sage mode. See, Hashirama is only truly able to access his highest level of jutsu after tapping into his Sage mode, which is why he uses Sage Art True 1,000 Arms Kanon. Now, obviously, a large amount of Hashirama's wood release does come from pulling in Senjutsu chakra. The level of Senjutsu chakra required to pull off things like True 1,000 Arm Kanon is insane. And mind you, the way that you make Senjutsu chakra is combining nature energy with your own chakra. So anybody who's able to wield an ungodly amount of Senjutsu has to have an ungodly amount of chakra. And mind you, Hashirama's healing factor uses a comparable amount, if not more chakra than Tsunade and Sakura's mitotic regeneration. And it's always on, which some people have to save up chakra for years to use. He just wakes up with. Outside of all of this, one of the best examples we have of Hashirama's insane levels of chakra is the fact that he was able to maintain the 4 red yang formation, which is a Kage level barrier capable of keeping the 10 tails confined while also having 10 wood clones running around. Meaning at 1/10 of his chakra level, Hashirama had enough chakra to maintain a barrier strong enough to keep the 10 tails right where he wanted, which isn't even the first time he did that, because he's also able to use his god deity gates, which were able to not only pin the 10 tails down, but Jubito for a little bit. And this was a non-peak Hashirama. But why settle for a reincarnation of Asura when you can just have Asura? I know I said I wasn't gonna do any Otsutsuki, but I don't know, he's got human skin. I feel like him and Indra don't count. Like, he's technically only, what,
Wait,
the
don't
4th
move.
Hagoromo Hagoromo would be half, and then yeah, they would be a 4th. That feels low enough. Now, when it comes to canon feats for Asura, we have none. In fact, when it comes to pretty much any canon information about Asura or Indra, we don't have much. So we're gonna be taking from filler here. We learned in the filler episodes about Asura and Indra that Asura was just like Naruto, born with no special attributes. However, by undergoing grueling hard work and amassing a bunch of loyal followers, eventually he began to form into a powerful, well, not ninja, but human being. And upon realizing that Asura was a capable leader, Hagoromo decided to leave him with his body, which essentially means that Hagoromo left him his life force and his chakra. Now, having the life force and the chakra of Hagoromo is insane. While technically Hagoromo now, post-death, has infinite chakra, pre-death he still had a pretty good amount. I mean, he was the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails. He had creation of all things. He could do anything he wanted. Now he could do more than that, but before he died, he could still do a lot. And upon inheriting his father's body, he also became the inheritor of Ninshu, and spreading Ninshu with the world, Hagoromo's life goal. But also after inheriting his father's body, he was able to defeat Indra, who inherited his eyes. And he was obviously able to do this through the usage of his Asura mode and his giant Rasengan bubble with a bunch of other Rasengans in it. Now, mind you, the Rasengan is supposed to be the height of shape transformation in Jutsu, with the Rasen Shuriken being an extra step, bringing it even further into the upper echelons of shape transformation. However, Asura's ability to create a bubble and then make a bunch of Rasengan circling around in that bubble is one step even further. Now, the name of this technique is Meno no Me Hashira. We're gonna call it Chakra Bubble. And Asura's chakra was so insane that he could sense people from countries away and heal anybody's injuries. He could put people to sleep by controlling their senses. In the anime, he also had True 1,000 hands, which he used to battle against Indra's Susanoo. Because why not? Just completely recycle everything we've already seen. But on top of this, he also had 6 paths Senjutsu and yin-yang abilities. So not only did he have Hagoromo chakra, he also also, unlike Hashirama, had six-path senjutsu, which allowed him to tap into a super boosted form of chakra, allowing him to control and manifest 6 true secret orbs simultaneously, as well as manifesting his six-path kunitsukami, which is essentially when Naruto combined the 3 versions of Kurama to give him 3 heads and 6 arms. Because why not just recycle everything? But I mean, he's the guy who makes everybody else have more chakra by being their reincarnation, so he's gotta be really high on the list. Though, ironically, not as high on the list as one of his reincarnation. Because coming in at number 1 is Naruto. Are we surprised? Did we think it was going to be some sleeper pick? You make a list in Naruto that has anything to do with power, and guess who's at number 1 on the list? It's Naruto. In the war, he had as much chakra as Hashirama had in his peak, and that was before acquiring the entirety of Kurama. The combination of his chakra and half of Kurama was enough to go up against a whole other half of Kurama and 8 other tailed beasts and Sasuke in the Valley of the End. He only became closer with Kurama after the conclusion of the 4th Great Shinobi World War, and therefore was able to access the entirety of Kurama's chakra to use things like Baryon mode. He was able to create a Rasengan so large that Delta's chakra absorption system malfunctioned and she was destroyed. Momoshiki pulled out his chakra for 6 hours and only got half of it. He, when he activated Baryon mode, collided his chakra with Kurama, and Kurama ran out of chakra first. And Kurama is stronger than all of the other tailed beasts combined. He has Ashura's reincarnation, and therefore he has Hagoromo's body. While as far as Ashura reincarnations and Ashura go, he obviously doesn't use wood release. He was, while in Kurama chakra mode, able to create 2 shadow clones, jam everybody together, give Kurama 3 heads and 6 arms. 6 arms which he used to create a 6-paths Ultra Big Ball Rasen Shuriken and a tailed beast Rasen Shuriken simultaneously, and throw them at Sasuke's Indra's arrow, which was powered by 8 half-tailed beasts. Mind you, this was after battling against the likes of Obito and Madara for a day, yet he was still able to not only enter his Kurama chakra mode, but also duplicate it, which meant even while exhausted, he had enough chakra to maintain a Kurama chakra mode with 1/3 chakra. In Naruto the Last, we've seen that he's able to manifest Kurama separate of himself, while also being able to generate enough chakra to destroy a Tensei god, as well as be able to coat himself with enough dense chakra that he can deflect an attack that split the moon in half. He, with the help of Sasuke, was able to pull off a 6-pass Shibaku Tensei and recreate a moon in Kaguya's dimension. When it comes to chakra, there is nobody that even comes close. Even the man that he's supposedly a reincarnation of. I mean, there is people who come close, just nobody on this list. As basically every Otsutsuki we've ever met has more chakra than Naruto. Yes, Kaguya, Momoshiki, Ishiki, Hagoromo all have more chakra than Naruto. And if technically you wanted to make a list about who in the Naruto universe has the most chakra, period, Otsutsukis included, it would be either Shibai Otsutsuki or Hagoromo, as both have shed their physical bodies and have the ability to travel between dimensions and are possibly infinitely powered by, well, concepts. As Hagoromo gathers his power from the Pure Lands, which is canonical Naruto heaven, and Shibai probably gathers his power from a wall of Jogan that exists in a dimension that he controls. Now, Kaguya also definitely has more chakra than Naruto. Her ability to pull parts of dimensions to herself is probably one of the most insane things we've seen in all of Naruto. See, Kaguya doesn't teleport the people around her to a dimension. Kaguya opens dimensional rifts and rips parts of dimensions to her, as well as being a wielder of the Rinne Sharingan and being able to launch Infinite Tsukiyomi, a planet-busting attack, amongst a myriad of other reasons. Basically, every Otsutsuki, with the possible exception of Kinshiki or Shiki, and maybe Toneri, has more chakra than Naruto, but that's boring. And just like that, that's it. The top 10 chakra pools in Naruto, ranked and explained. Do you guys agree with my ranking? Do you wish I added the Otsutsukis in? Tell me in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Again, I'm aware that the office is depressing. It'll soon be so gorgeous. I mean,
are you all
it won't be. This will be a very empty room in a couple of days, but the new office will be gorgeous.
That's the community. However, you are now in hacker. Oh, conclusion. You were right, young sir.
Hey.
I initiated these.
First off, secondly, you, and lastly. All right.
It's interesting. You are now taking.
So today is going to be one of my quieter videos. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, Nick, you sound awful. And that's because I am awful. This is what happens to your voice when you go to a 3-day rave in Cancun, Mexico, and spend the entire time screaming. This is the loudest I can talk, which is a shame because we have absolutely massive news to talk about today. Today, we're going to be talking about the ultimate weapon of the Uchiha, the 괰ᴇ Sharingan. And I know what you're saying. You're saying,
Nick, we've been doing a lot of videos about the MS recently.
and you're right. So that's because there's a lot of content revolving around the MS happening currently in the Naruto universe. And because for some reason I haven't really talked about the MS prior. What is the absolutely massive news revolving around the MS happening in the Naruto universe currently? Well, for those of you who aren't caught up with Boruto, in Chapter 80 of Boruto's manga, it was revealed that Sarada has awoken her MS, not in a traditional way. Sarada has awoken her MS through the power of love, the same way that she awoke her Sharingan almost 70 chapters ago, which has sent the majority of the Naruto fandom who are still tapped into the goings-on of the Naruto universe into a flurry, because the awakening of an MS through any means outside of killing somebody close to you has never happened before. And therefore, we're heading into unprecedented territory. We understand that Sarada awakening her MS through the power of love is a symbolic end to the cycle of hatred. But what comes with the end of the cycle of hatred that's lasted over 2,000 years? What kind of abilities come with an MS that hasn't been awoken through hatred? And does an MS that's awoken through love adhere to all the same rules as a regular MS? Today, we're hoping to find the answers to all of those questions. Most specifically, what will Sarada's MS ability be? Now, when Chapter 80 came out, I made some rough estimations about what I believe Sarada's MS will be, based on the concept that Sarada emotionally is in a very similar place to where Itachi was when he awoke his MS. And since the 괰ᴇ Sharingan is supposed to be a reflection of the soul, and therefore the abilities possessed by those who unlock it are supposed to be reflections of how they were when they unlocked it, it seemed to me at the time to be a relatively good assumption that Sarada's abilities would be Tsukiyomi and Amaterasu to reflect her similarity to Itachi. But as I've become the talking head to this issue, a lot of people have reached out to me with their theories. And I gotta say, they're better than what I thought of. Not only are they better than what I thought of, I'm almost 100% sure they're what Sarada's MS abilities will be. So sit back, relax, put your future sight glasses on, because today we're talking what will Sarada's MS abilities be. But before we get to answering questions, before they're answered by the manga guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. If you like the sound of my voice struggling to make anime content, you're gonna love my other channel, The Weeb Commando, where I talk about all anime that aren't Naruto or Boruto. And if you think this new version of my voice is sexy and cool and not just grating and irritating, you're gonna love it in an audio-only format. That format being Otaku's Anonymous, me and Danny Mata's brand new anime podcast, where we break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And officially introduced Sarada into one of the most prestigious clubs in all of Naruto, MS Wielders. With the only manga canon MS Wielders outside of her direct lineage of bloodline being Madara, Izuna, and Shisui, it is a very tough club to get into. But ever since we saw the sun pattern of Sarada's MS light up during Chapter 80 of Boruto, a million questions have arisen. Every question from will her eye darken because it was awoken through love to what color will her Susanoo be has arisen. And while we can't know anything for sure currently, we are very rarely wrong on this page. Though I will admit my original estimation of her having Amaterasu and some kind of genjutsu is a bit off, but not as off as it could be. See, the reason that I believe Sarada would have abilities similar to that of Itachi is because she's going through something very similar to what Itachi went through when he awoke his MS. See, when Itachi awoke his MS, he was dealing with the duality of perception. Itachi was a spy on the Uchiha for Konoha, but because he was a spy and so closely related to the head of the coup Fugaku, he understood both sides' arguments and qualms. But because he understood both sides' arguments and qualms so well, he could see the reality of both situations, and he saw how the perception of that reality was warped on the side opposite of it. That is to say that the Uchihas greatly over-exaggerated all of the wrongs done to them in Konoha, while Konoha exaggerated the danger of the Uchiha. And the difference between the objective reality and the perception of the other side is what Itachi found himself in the middle of. And it's because of this that he awoke an ability called Tsukiyomi that allowed him to control somebody's perception and make it reality, where he was given the ability to stretch 1 second into whatever amount of time he wanted, being able to place plays Kakashi into 72 hours of torture while being able to give his girlfriend her entire life with him. The first person that Itachi kills during the Uchiha Massacre is his girlfriend, and he uses Tsukiyomi on her to give her her entire life with him. And Itachi manifested the Amaterasu to burn away the lies of Konoha and the Uchiha, but most specifically the lies of Danzo. Now, to me at least, it felt relatively obvious that Sarada was gonna awaken Amaterasu. I mean, think about it. Both Itachi and Sasuke had it. Genetically, there's a pretty good roll of the dice chance that she's gonna get it. Add into the fact that her MS design is quite literally a sun, and Amaterasu is the Shinto deity of the sun. And it pretty much seemed like it was all but guaranteed that Sarada was getting Amaterasu just like her father. However, what we have to take into account here is the difference in how Sarada and her father Sasuke awoke their MS in the first place. See, while one can make the argument that Sarada's Amaterasu will be manifested to burn away the lies of Ada, that still leaves us with a couple of major differences between Sasuke and Sarada's character. See, both Sasuke and Itachi manifested their Monkey-Kyo Sharingan out of hatred, out of killing somebody close to them. Itachi had to finish the job for Danzo against Shisui, and Sasuke ended up killing Itachi. Sarada didn't kill anybody. In fact, she awoke her MS trying to help people, which leads people to believe that while she will manifest a fire ability with her Sun Eye, it won't be one of destruction. Now, first off, I have to say thank you to Will Galton, who emailed me this theory in the first place, because honestly, I didn't think of this. But like with any theory that I've been sent, I've extrapolated on the point majorly. If Sarada's gonna awaken a fire ability that's not Amaterasu in one of her eyes, what will it be? Well, we all know that Kishimoto likes naming MS abilities after Shinto deities. Susanoo is the god of storms, Tsukiyomi is the god of the moon, and Amaterasu is the goddess of the sun. Kodo Matsukami is the name for the primordial gods that created Izanagi and Izanami, who are the progenitor gods who created all of the other minor gods like Amaterasu, Tsukiyomi, and Susanoo. And Izanagi and Izanami are also MS abilities. And while Kamui isn't from Shinto lore, it is from Ainu lore. And the Ainu religion is an ancient religion from Hokkaido, the northern island of Japan. So every single MS ability is named after some kind of ancient Japanese deity. So whittling down which one Sarada will be named after isn't super easy, but since we already know it's going to revolve around fire and most likely the sun, it pretty much only gives us one option. See, the god that Sarada's MS ability is going to be named after is actually a god we've talked about on my other channel, the Weeb Commander, a fair amount. Because the god that Sarada's MS ability is going to be named after is Ame no Uzume. For those of you who are Demon Slayer fans and have watched my Demon Slayer videos, you'll know Ame no Uzume is the goddess of revelry and dawn. And the reason we've talked about Ame no Uzume is because Ame no Uzume was the creator of the Hinokami Kagura. See, the story behind Ame no Uzume and Amaterasu is actually very important when describing what Sarada's MS ability will be. See, in Shinto lore, Amaterasu and Susanoo had a fight, and Susanoo vandalized Amaterasu's rice fields, threw a dead horse at her, and killed one of her maidens. In retaliation against Susanoo, Amaterasu threw herself into the Heavenly Rock Cave. However, since she was the goddess of the sun, throwing herself into this cave cast the entire world into darkness. With the world cast into darkness, everybody assumed the end was near. Now, none of the gods could lure Amaterasu out of this cave. That was until Ame no Uzume turned over a bathtub in front of the cave and began to dance on it while tearing off her clothes in front of the other gods. The other gods thought this was so comical that they began to laugh, and this lured Amaterasu out of the cave. And with Amaterasu out of the cave and the cave being sealed, light came back to the earth. This dance would forever be known as the Kagura, or the Hinokami Kagura. So what does Ame no Uzume have to do with Sarada's MS? Well, the obvious relationship to Amaterasu helps substantially. But when we focus on the most bare-bone parts of the story, we realize that Ame no Uzume returned the sun to the earth. The world had been cast into darkness since Amaterasu entered the cave, and Ame no Uzume was the one who returned the sun to the earth. Therefore, while Ame no Uzume, not a sun god or a fire god herself, played a crucial role in maintaining the status quo of the earth through returning the sun to it. And considering the nature of Sarada's MS awakening and the fact that her MS is in the shape of the sun, Ame no Uzume is a relatively obvious connection. And now that we understand the nature of her MS and what goddess it's named after, it's not that hard to extrapolate what its abilities will be. It's theorized that instead of burning with black flames like Amaterasu, Ame no Uzume will burn with bright white or gold flames.
then.
Flames that are
That's
reminiscent
just a
of the
duplicate.
dawn, since
Correction.
괂ᴜᴜᴇ is
Not
the
only is
goddess
the one
of
in your
the
possession
dawn.
a
And while
duplicate,
these flames,
but
when
so
they
is
come
the
into
one here.
contact with something,
The
just like
real
Amaterasu
curio
will
was
stick to
transferred
it
elsewhere
forever,
at the
they
very
won't
beginning.
destroy.
But
In
what if
fact,
I attack the
they'll
space
do the
station
opposite.
again?
It's theorized that these flames, when they come into
would have
contact with
nothing to do
somebody,
with
instead of
me.
burning them to ash,
But I must
will
warn you,
heal them.
it
These
is likely
flames
that
will burn
someone
on
would
this
step
person
forward to
until
stop
they
you.
are completely healed. It's the
Then
complete opposite
what if I
of
were to
Amaterasu.
destroy the
But not only will
I'm
these
sorry,
shining
but
bright
that simply
flames
isn't
heal,
possible.
they will also burn
Ether
away the
editing isn't
darkness
capable
in
of
anybody's
destroying the
heart. That is to
entire
say, in
universe.
significantly simpler terms,
What is the
these
point of
flames
this,
will
then?
pacify the
You guys
anger
went
of
out of your way to
anybody
put
who's
together
lit
this
by them.
trap.
Let's
That's
say,
right.
hypothetically, I'm
This
going
way,
to attack
the game
Sarada, and
that
she
you
hits
so
me with
carefully
괂ᴜᴜᴜᴇ.
orchestrated
Any
is now
malice or ill
pointless,
will I
is it
hold
not?
towards Sarada will
Silver
burn
Wolf.
away as these
I-
flames heal my
However,
body, either
Herta
swaying
felt
me to
that this would
Sarada's
be too
cause or
easy
simply
on you,
convincing
and
me to
wanted to
leave
add
the
something of her
battlefield.
own.
And the beauty of this MS ability is
why,
that it's
in
tied to
this
Sarada
very
in
moment,
more than
she
one
has
way.
reverse
Obviously, the
hacked
tie to
you and
Amaterasu through her
located all
father,
your
but awakening it in a
interastral
different
network
light and returning sun to the
How
earth
would
as
it be
opposed to
if the
destroying things
IPC
with her
would
MS ability
freeze
is
all
cool.
of them?
But if these flames were to hypothetically heal, it would not only tie to her father, but her
And
mother.
shoot.
Sarada is the daughter to one of the
Games are
greatest
always
healers
fun
in
in the
Naruto's
eyes of a
history.
child.
And Sakura, Sarada's
to an
mother,
adult,
comes
it's
from a
about
lineage
time
of
we-
incredible healers, as her teacher was Tsunade. And Tsunade is known for revolutionizing how ninja teams were created, making sure that at least one person has a small amount of medical ninjutsu on a 3-person team. It's not only greatly improved the efficiency of the ninja teams within Konoha, but also rocketed Konoha to an even further prowess of power. And while many assumed that Sarada, as the daughter of Sakura, would have incredible healing prowess, in a couple of anime-only episodes, Sarada has tried to undergo medical
already
ninjutsu
noticed.
training. However, after trying these courses, Sarada realized she didn't have the chakra control to be a medical ninjutsu specialist,
Thank
which
you,
dealt
Yo.
a
Do
massive
you
blow
have
to her
any-
confidence, as her
If you
mother
are,
is
if
quite
don't
literally
worry.
the best medical
Please.
ninjutsu user on Earth. And therefore, she believed that she should have a relatively easy time mastering these techniques.
Her
But
ultimate-
she
all
didn't,
those-
which leaves the new generation
Well,
of Team
young sir.
7 with absolutely no medical ninjutsu ability. I mean, obviously, Mitsuki and Boruto are both geniuses in their own respect, but they don't know medical ninjutsu. And
This
considering the fact that
chapter-
it's been the president of 3-man teams in Konoha since Tsunade's time to have at least one person who knows medical ninjutsu, somebody amongst the new Team 7 has to figure it out at some point or another. However, Sarada is an Uchiha, and she's going to have a Susanoo, and she's going to be incredibly powerful. Relegating her to be a medical
fine.
ninjutsu specialist would be an underselling of her character. But the
I
ties
am
to her
not
mother and the
throwing a
necessity of medical
tantrum.
ninjutsu in a 3-man team are
Anyway,
undeniable.
what are you-
Therefore, the best way to introduce
If
medical
you're going
ability into
alone,
Sarada's repertoire isn't
I
to make her a
probably won't.
medical ninjutsu
Oh,
specialist and
I
make her a
hope
one-trick
you-
pony,
Don't
kind of
worry.
like Sakura,
Getting
even though
a move
Sakura
on
is
all.
I
far
told you.
from a one-trick pony nowadays, is to
There's
give her a
fun.
healing ability tied into her Sharingan. A healing ability that would give her medical ninjutsu
game is a
prowess
game.
similar to that of her mother without all of the years of practice. Medical ninjutsu ability that would allow her to differentiate herself from both Sasuke and Sakura while keeping her roots close to them. See, healing through the Sharingan is something we've never seen before. And again, awakening the Sharingan through the power of love is something we've never seen before. Considering the fact that Sarada represents the cycle of hatred being broken amongst the Uchihas, if she had an ability in 괂ᴜᴜᴜᴜ that was able to pacify her enemies, it would be incredibly symbolic of that feat. And now, not only is Sarada a walking representation of the end of thousands of years of violence amongst the Uchihas, she is a representation of the fact that the Sharingan can be used for so much more than destruction, while also acting in a capacity to keep some of her closest friends like Boruto and Mitsuki alive. Considering the fact that this ability most likely won't be considered an attack, it could be used against people with a reflection shinjutsu like
If there's
Daemon,
nothing
giving
pressing,
Sarada a
let's take
massive
a
amount
look.
of usefulness down the line. If she's gonna have 괂ᴜᴜᴜᴜ in one eye, what will the ability of her other eye be? Well, this one I actually did kind of get right. Or at least my theory aligns with the theory that was emailed to me. See, I stated that Sarada would get Amaterasu and some genjutsu that would allow her to battle against the brainwashing of Ada. And this theory is corroborated by the fact that in Naruto the Last, we see a war between two factions, one wielding a crescent moon flag and one wielding a sun flag. Now, the irony of this battle is it's over an ideology. We know that Hamura was sent to the moon to keep an eye on Kage after she was sealed there by him and Hagoromo. However, Hamura, apparently not wanting to be lonely, brought a bunch of people with him. Hamura, apparently being a little bit horny, propagated the entire moon with a massive population. Now, Hamura, just like Hagoromo, was not immortal, and eventually Hamura passed. However, when Hamura passed, two separate ideologies awoke amongst the people he left on the moon. Those being those who believed that the people on Earth had strayed from Hagoromo's teachings, and the others believing that those on Earth should be left to do their earthly things. These two warring ideologies eventually got to, well, warring, until only one person was left living. Toneri, who came from the side that believed that intervention should be launched against Earth to bring them back to Hagoromo's principles. And the symbols for these two warring ideologies was a crescent moon and a sun. The reason that's important is because these two symbols are exact carbon copies of Sarada's MS in Ada's Senrigan, meaning there's a possibility in 2014 that Kishimoto was calling his shot of having Sarada and Ada battle it out over the ideology of the world. As we all know, in chapter 79 of Boruto, Ada brainwashed the entire world into believing that Boruto was the bad guy and Kawaki was Naruto's son. Now, while my original hypothesis was that Sarada's MS would either be Tsukiyomi or Koto Matsukame to battle against this perception that Boruto is the bad guy, the theory posited by Will, who emailed me, is a little bit different. This theory posits that much in the same capacity that Sarada's other eye was named after a new god from Shinto lore we've never gotten before, that her Genjutsu eye will also be named after a Shinto deity we haven't got yet. And that deity will be ōmoikane, who is the Shinto god of wisdom and intelligence. Now, ōmoikane's role within the Shinto deities was to give them counsel. As the god of wisdom and intelligence, he was the voice of reason amongst Shinto deities. And the true beauty of Sarada's MS ability being named after this god of wisdom and intelligence is that when Amaterasu went to go hide in the cave, he was given the task of finding a way to get her out, which also gives him a connection to bring Amaterasu back to the world. Now, it's theorized that this Genjutsu ability will give Sarada the ability to cast Genjutsu on multiple people at once. And while the idea of Genjutsu being cast on multiple people at once isn't a crazy concept, we've seen it dozens of times before, with good examples being in the beginning of the Konoha Crush arc when the entire Colosseum was placed under a Genjutsu. We've never seen a Sharingan with the capacity to place Genjutsu on multiple people simultaneously. Now, the way this Genjutsu will operate will be a bit different than any other Genjutsu we've ever seen. See, this Genjutsu will be about creating illusions. There'll be no bodies made out of crow, there'll be no melting bones, there'll be no being tied to a cross. In fact, this Genjutsu will operate in a capacity very similar to that of Amino Usume, in that its key purpose is to illuminate, not destroy. See, this Genjutsu will operate in a function directly opposed to the Senrigan's Charm Shinjutsu. That is to say that instead of trying to create illusions, this Genjutsu will attempt to make you see reality. That is, reality such as Sarada sees it. In simpler terms, basically what we're driving at here is that Sarada will be able to imprint her worldview on anybody she catches in this Genjutsu. While Ada's brainwashing is most likely what this Genjutsu was created to go up against, as Sarada being able to imprint her worldview on the people around her will give her the ability to show people that Boruto's not actually evil. The capacity for this Genjutsu goes far beyond just being a counter against Ada. Let's say hypothetically Sarada was in a war, and she found herself up against a Suna shinobi who thought Konoha was evil. If she uses Genjutsu against that shinobi, she would be able to imprint her worldview onto that person. Her worldview would mean that Suna was evil and that Konoha were the good guys, imprinting her own version of objective truth onto those around her. Obviously, this isn't the way it's going to be used. It's going to be used against those who've been brainwashed by Ada. Much in the same capacity that Amino Usume is supposed to return light to the world, she'll use the light of this Genjutsu to return the light of objective reality to anybody under Ada's charm. This Genjutsu will operate a lot like Koto Matsukame, permanent until broken. It'll also operate similar to Koto Matsukame, where those who are cast under it don't even notice the chain. Much in the same capacity as those cut under Ada's charm Shinjutsu didn't even notice the chain. And it'll be through this battle of the manipulation of people's psyches to make them see what version of truth either Ada or Sarada want that we will see the fulfillment of the battle between the sun and the moon. Sorry, I was sweating through my shirt. Cold water isn't good for a sore throat. You gotta drink warm water. But drinking warm water, well, it's warm in your office and you're naturally a sweaty guy. It's not fun. Oh, we now know Sarada's MS abilities. We know it's gonna be Amino Usume and ōmoikane, which really only leaves the question, will Sarada's MS darken? Will she go blind? See, we all know that in order to awaken an EMS, you have to stick the eyes of somebody family related to you who's also awoken an MS and smush them into yours. And while some people, me, have theorized that Sasuke will die and that she will inherit Sasuke's eyes and therefore awaken EMS through that capacity, there's also been some mumbling of people saying that Sarada won't even have to go that far. So there's some people out there who believe that Sarada actually won't have to worry about her eyes going blind because she awoke her eye through love. Because the blinding of an MS eye is usually referred to as darkening, that the lack of darkness associated with the awakening of her MS and the fact that she's now out of the cycle of hatred means that she won't have to worry about her eye going blind from repeated use. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to the blinding of an MS eye, we know, like, nothing. Truly the only thing that we have to point us in any direction of like, this is why an MS goes blind is when Tobirama in the War Arc explained how a Sharingan awakes in an Uchiha brain. It was at that point that it was described to us that usage of an MS requires an insane amount of optical nerve strain. Therefore, we've kind of had to infer that usage of the MS makes you go blind because of the strain it puts on your eye, which unfortunately is a biological function, and therefore really has nothing to do with being awoken through love or hatred. In essence, usage of the MS is very similar to usage of the Byakugan, because the reason Byakugan users get a bunch of veins around their eyes is because using the Byakugan is incredibly hard to do. However, Byakugan users mitigate the damage to their eyes by pumping a ton of blood to their eyes, something that users of the MS don't do. I mean, blood ends up in their eyes, but not in the places it should be. So unfortunately, the theory that Sarada awoke her MS through love and therefore it won't darken, I don't think stands on its own 2 feet, especially because it's largely predicated on the idea that the MS darken, which is to say that the MS go blind in a unique way. That unique way being they slowly over time darken. However, we've gotten POV shots from both Kakashi and Sasuke while their eyes were going blind, and their eyes weren't darkening, just blurring. However, that doesn't mean that I don't believe that Sarada will be able to maintain an MS for a long time. I believe Sarada's ability to keep an MS maybe forever lies closer to either Obito or Tsunade or Sakura. You see, Obito was able to spam his MS basically infinitely because half of his body was Hashirama's cells, and therefore any damage done to his eye was healed by Hashirama's healing factor. Now here's the thing, while I do think it would be cool if Sarada was able to unlock the Byakuya seal, I don't think it's hugely likely. If we're taking the anime canon episodes as anime canon, we've already seen that Sarada's chakra control isn't great, and the Byakuya seal is quite literally the most chakra control intensive jutsu you can learn. However,